There is one simple solution to this whole situation going on with the Olympic boxing, and that is to simply test both of these athletes to see if they are in fact female. That'll clear up all the issue and confusion for everyone. But there is a reason why you might not want to do this, and that would be if you're trying to hide something. It looks like we now have dudes beating up women in boxing in the Olympics. Or do we? It seems like there may be a new category of trans women who don't actually know that they're biological males. And we're talking about Imane Khelif of Algeria and Lin Yu-Ting from Taiwan. So let's take a look at some information from Fact Check, because you know you can trust anything that says fact checking. But I've been going through a lot of different websites doing research, and a lot of this is what's gonna come up on most of what you look for. So Imane Khelif, let's see. It is not verified that Imane Khelif has variation in sex traits or DSDs, which is differences in sexual development. But according to NBC and the Associated Press, the IBA, which is the International Boxing Association, president claimed that DNA test results showed that 2 athletes had XY chromosomes. So you have XX is female, XY is male, citing that is the reason they were disqualified from the World Championships. And we're talking about Imane Khelif, and the other is Lin Yu-Ting, who we're gonna get to in a little bit. So both of them had DNA test results showing XY chromosomes, which would be biologically male. However, the IBA has since been decertified as the governing international body of boxing and is not recognized by the IOC or the International Olympics Committee. And one of the things that makes this situation interesting is that both Imane Khelif, we see, participated in the 2021 Tokyo Olympics and multiple other women's tournaments, and Lin Yu-Ting also competed in the 2020 Olympics and met all criteria. And again, we see here it says Lin Yu-Ting was similarly disqualified from the IBA championship last year for unspecified gender eligibility. Now this got me here. The IOC released guidelines more than 2 years ago that said there should be no presumed advantage based on sex assigned at birth or sex characteristics. There's no presumed advantage based on your sex, then why in the world do we have male and female sports? Why don't we just lump everyone in the Olympics together and see what happens? The guys are probably gonna win pretty much everything. That doesn't mean guys are better human beings than women. It just means you have different physical capabilities. That's why we're broken up into 2 separate categories, male and female. Now looking here, is Lin Yu-Ting a man? So both of them have competed in the Olympics in the past and other sports, but what we didn't know until last year, because that's when it happened, was that the IBA officials found tests that showed Lin had XY chromosomes, which indicates a person is biologically male. And we have the same claims for Imane, who was disqualified from the same World Championships, failing those gender eligibility tests. And here it says, identifies as female on her passport. That's gonna be kind of funny later as we see why that makes a big deal. So there's also rare intersex medical conditions that we'll get to later when we look at whether they should even be allowed to compete. But right now we're just looking strictly at these DNA tests. So we have here the IBA letter, so that's the International Boxing Association, who's been disbanded from the Olympics now, to the International Olympics Committee, June 2023. Boxer's DNA was that of a male consisting of XY chromosomes. So we have here, the president of the IOC, Thomas Bach, said, here we have 2 boxers who were born as women, who have been raised as a woman, who have a passport as a woman, and who have competed for many years as a woman, and this is the clear definition of a woman. There was never any doubt about them being a woman. Okay, I have seen videos of parents saying, look, my baby is non-binary. My baby is transgender. Babies don't even know what any of that is. And if your parents are crazy and raising you like that, that kid's only gonna have issues and not gonna know what is reality when that child gets older. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, especially like with Imane Khelif. Coming from Algeria, that's not really a transgender friendly place. We're talking about almost all Muslim country there. So I don't think that's the case here, but you can be born as intersex. So this is a rare condition. This isn't male, female, and intersex is a separate gender or separate sex. It's a genetic abnormality that happens where you're born with some characteristics of both, but typically you're gonna have more of one than the other. And you can have these DNA tests that show whether you're a male or female, XY versus XX. So in other countries though, where they may not have as good technology as we have, you might not know until really the kid hits puberty and things start changing. So if we sit here and say, well, you were raised as a woman, so that makes you a woman. I have a son, then 4 girls in a row, and we just had another son. And if I wanted, I could raise that child as a woman and tell him that he's a woman and make his mind think he's a woman. I'm not saying that Imane's parents did this, but it could be the case where they generally thought this was a girl and then things started changing as you got to puberty. We don't know the whole history or how that worked out, but you can be raised as a woman and think you're a woman even though you don't have the biology to match it. And then to say, who has a passport as a woman? You can fake passports pretty easily. So just saying that, well, my passport says I'm a woman, so I'm a woman. I mean, come on. So basically they're saying being raised as a woman, having a passport that says you're a woman, and competing as a woman makes you a woman. Now, if we look here at the rules of the International Athletic Federations, it says they're allowed to establish their own regulations when it comes to sex eligibility of athletes. So the International Olympic Committee said that the gender and age of athletes are based on their passport, according to the IOC. So again, now all I have to do is have a passport that says I'm a woman and says what my age is, and then I'm good to go. We don't have to have any other proof. It says the IBA's testing requirements are unclear, but the president said that it was proven that both of them have XY chromosomes, which is seen in men. And back to the letter here, what we see now is that some want to own the definition of who is a woman. There I can only invite them to come up with a scientific-based new definition of who is woman, and how can somebody being born, raised, competed, and having a passport as a woman, how can they not be considered a woman? Okay, so we said right here, I invite them to come up with a scientific-based definition of who is a woman. Okay, so is saying someone is raised as a woman, has a passport as a woman, and competed a woman, make them a woman? Is that a definition? Or a scientific definition might be, what's your genetic makeup? That's something you can look at and test, and the IBA says they did that. It says when Box says the IOC is ready to listen and ready to look into it, the obvious question, what about the IBA letter that was sent in 2023? So the IOC's position is that the gender and age of the athletes are based on their passport, as we covered. So that's kind of ridiculous. That's real scientific, you know? That's the definition of a woman, what your passport says. But if you look at the IBA technical document, it says, women, female, girl means an individual with chromosome XX. For this purpose, the boxers can be submitted to a random and/or targeted gender test to confirm the above, which will serve the gender eligibility criteria for the IBA competitions. Now, this is a new rule that came about in May of 2023, where it allows them to determine the gender based on that, and they can do these random gender tests. Before that, it didn't have any references. But if you're looking for a scientific definition, as they set up here, you know, I invite them to come up with a scientific-based definition. Well, it seems like looking at your genetic makeup with this having the ability to test people for that would qualify as a scientific test. And the test would help us understand that. We have 2 outcomes. One, biologically male. Okay, you're disqualified from it. Sorry that you have some female traits. You had this possibly intersex condition, which we haven't had verified, but if that's the case, you're biologically male. That would show us why you have these higher testosterone levels, which these tests have claimed as well that they had higher testosterone levels, and that is gonna help you out in competition. That is gonna help you build more muscle, change your bone structure, be more like a man because, well, you're biologically male. And if you're biologically male, then you're not allowed to compete in the female competitions. It's as simple as that, regardless if you were thought to be born as a woman and raised as a woman and have a passport as a woman. You're biologically male, sorry. You can't compete with the women. And then the other outcome could be that they have XX chromosome, which now shows that they're biologically female. But you can also have internal testes, this has happened to people before, that produces more testosterone in the women because you have some of those traits of both. You are biologically female, but you have that advantage of more testosterone, which, especially in puberty, when you start growing, that's gonna make a huge difference in your athletic capabilities. And if you don't think that higher testosterone doesn't give you any kind of benefit, then why are steroids banned in competition? Why are people not allowed to use drugs going into the Olympics? Because they help you improve and give you an edge, which most people probably are and know what to take and when to take them and then come off so that if they get tested, it's not going to be detectable. There's lots of documentaries on this stuff. So if you think everybody in the Olympics is natural, then that's probably not the case. And if this is the case and they're producing higher testosterone than normal, there are testosterone threshold limits for women competing in sports because women have a certain range, men have a certain range, and if you're above that range, it would be the same as if you're injecting testosterone and had a higher amount. Now this seems like it might not be as fair because this is happening naturally, it's something you can't control, but it still does put you over that limit that's allowed for women to be in competition based on the standard range of stuff. So it's a little more difficult there, but even still, it's outside the normal range. So then just like if you were competing in drug tested events and your testosterone tested way higher, they're gonna think you're on drugs. So, I mean, you really shouldn't be competing then either because you have that unfair advantage, and it's not a natural thing, it's a genetic deformity essentially that's causing this to happen. And it can seem like a difficult situation that's unfair to those two competitors because they might not even know they have that issue. Like they said, they think they're born as a woman. If they do have those XY chromosomes and they're biologically male, even though they were raised as women, have the women passports, well, you're actually a biological male. But that's why there are rules. You know, why do we have to cater to everyone's feelings and what they want? Like, what happened to, this is the rules, if you don't meet it, you don't get in. Just like the military, they have certain rules and some people don't qualify because of genetic abnormalities. You can't get in. There's rules for everything. Why do we feel the need to cater to that one person who just wants to compete because they do have that advantage over everyone, as opposed to everyone else who's on that level playing field and don't even have a chance because this one woman basically has male level testosterone? But what is more messed up is if they do know that they're male and they're still fighting women, like aside from the fact that you're purposefully cheating in a game, like now you want to beat up women? I'm not saying that's what they're wanting to do because I don't totally know this situation. I don't know them personally, and like we said with Imane Khelif, that's not, you know, transgender stuff. Probably not going on in Algeria, but you know, what was her name? What was his name? Imane McLaughlin. I mean, you look at this Wikipedia thing and it shows all this her stuff, but this dude was a US Army Special Forces sergeant and decided to become a woman and compete in women's UFC and is beating the crap out of women. Like, how messed up do you have to be mentally to want to beat up women? It's one thing to think that you are a woman, but now you're just wanting to go in there and beat up women. Like, yeah, you're probably gonna win because you've got a huge advantage, not only with being a man your whole life, which he's still a man, but now also having all that military fighting and experience, special forces stuff. Like, come on. How are we descending into this? And if they do end up being guys, biological males, what do? Well, now we know, now they're disqualified, now you take the medals away from them. Oh, that's unfair to them. It's happened before. Do you remember, I think it was the Sydney Olympics, when the Chinese cheated and had one of their gymnasts was underage competing in the Olympics, and when the Olympic Committee found out, International Olympic Committee, the same IOC, they stripped the medal from China and gave it to the United States. So it can be done. It's happened to people in the past when they've been found out to have cheated. And so, you know, that's just how it goes. That's why we have rules. That's why we have guidelines for these. And I don't get why we're trying to make exceptions for things like this. Like, it's not that hard. Like I said before, all you have to do is test them. Simply test them, and we'll know for sure. We'll know if they're biologically female, biologically male, have some kind of abnormality that's making this higher testosterone level that both of them have been reported to have. If you don't trust the IBA's results, just test them. And if I was them and I really thought and knew I was a woman, I would be perfectly happy. I'd be volunteering, saying, hey, go ahead and test me. I am a woman, because I have nothing to hide. If someone was to accuse me of being on steroids, if I was doing some kind of natural bodybuilding show or powerlifting meet and lifted a bunch, like, there's no way that guy's natural. I'd be like, awesome, I'm glad you think that. I will gladly take the test because I have nothing to hide. So if you have nothing to hide, take some tests, prove to everyone, then you can take your medals honorably, not have anything to hide. But if you do have something to hide, it would make sense why you wouldn't want to be tested. So let me know down in the comments, if you haven't already, from everything I've said, what you think of this situation. It seems like a pretty simple fix to me. Anyways, I'll see you on the next one.